All right, good morning. Look, for months we have stressed the importance of distinguishing things we can control and things we can't control. We can't control the trade policy of the United States. We recognize that that policy has fundamentally changed from the policy in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. And it's a situation where the United States has tariffs against every one of their trading partners to different degrees. And it's in that context that our officials, my colleagues, have been working with their American colleagues on detailed, constructive negotiations, discussions on specific transactions, specific sectors, steel, aluminum, and energy. And a lot of progress has been made. And we stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries.
Sorry guys, that was a last minute edition clip just during the editing of our Last Word episode, but I wanted to make sure we got this one in and commented on it because we can't control the U.S. trade policy. No, you're right, Mark, but what we can control is morons putting out ads in their news that screw up the entire trade policy. Your people stand at the ready to renegotiate on the progress they've already made, Mark? Interesting. They were already making that progress, supposedly, at least what you say, but now they can't because negotiations have stopped. Whose fault is that? Not the U.S.
Well, I know I said this morning that we were going to bring this episode out early. I didn't think necessarily this early. It was supposed to be, because it's supposed to be a very positive, exciting, and celebratory day here in Canada. We are in the World Series, the Blue Jays, for the first time in 32 years. We should all be sitting down excited to join the first game of the World Series, watch the celebrations ahead of it, the giant Canadian flag in the outfield, and be proud that we're there. But then what do we say? Overnight, we were told trade negotiations with Canada have been officially kaput, canceled, because of this man and Mark Carney. This man put out ads in the United States without permission, using Ronald Reagan's voice, to smear Donald Trump and to smear tariffs. Well, we were pretty close to sectoral deals, it seems like. Even if they weren't going to be what we were looking for, they were going to be better than what we have. But they're gone. It's over. Donald Trump has canceled trade negotiations, and he is furious. And meanwhile, Doug Ford and Mark Carney yesterday met together. Mark Carney had every single opportunity to say, hey, Doug, I'm right beside you. We're announcing this nuclear thing that's already been ongoing for 4 or 5 years, so this isn't new anyway. We should probably talk about those ads you're putting out in the U.S. because that might actually set us back as we get closer to sectoral deals. But they didn't. Instead, they joked about betting with Donald Trump about the World Series and betting Blue Jays versus Dodgers. Donald Trump wants nothing to do with that. Mark Carney even said himself he hasn't replied. You want to know why? This. That's why. What you just did. What you just allowed. What you allowed to take over in Republican states in the United States, irresponsibly, like an 8-year-old child having a tantrum with $75 million of our taxpayer money. Let's talk about this. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things, the last word. This was supposed to come out early, and it's even earlier now. I know I promised that this morning, but I didn't think it'd be this early. It needs to be, though. It's supposed to be a positive day, celebrating Game 1 of the World Series, but here we are. Today, we're not just ranting about political things. We're biting, and we're biting for a reason. We're biting into a mess so blatant, so politically tone-deaf, it screams everything that's wrong about the so-called liberal elite in this country. Make sure you like, subscribe, and of course, join the conversation on all of this fiasco down below, because what just happened in Ottawa, in Ontario, is a textbook example of how the fix yourself first crowd is destroying Canada from the inside out, and they don't even see it. Let's set the whole scene for our liberal friends. I hope you've tuned into this, because what you've just seen is destruction at epic scales. On one hand, you have Doug Ford. Yes, I know we call him the closest thing to liberal since sliced bread. It's a label, but let's call it what it is. The Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, spending $75 million of your Ontario taxpayer money on anti-tariff ads aimed at the United States and the U.S. President. A big ad buy, with the voice of former U.S. President Ronald Reagan in the mix, without permission from the Reagan Foundation, by the way, telling Americans to reject tariffs in a radio address originally aimed at Japan's semiconductor industry in 1987. The Ronald Reagan Foundation says Canada fraudulently used the audio. Americans see the ads, Donald Trump sees the ads, and the U.S. President says all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. For, by the way, the second time since Mark Carney became Prime Minister. So Canada, through Ontario and Mark Carney, used our money to effectively pick a fight with the U.S., and now our negotiating leverage is gone. Now, liberals, they will turn and blame Doug Ford for this. It was Doug Ford, after all, who put them out. But standing right behind Doug Ford yesterday was Mark Carney, the Prime Minister. And as per our narrative, he's Mr. World-Class Economist, Mr. Global Institutions, Mr. Smooth Politician, according to the news. He has done nothing to stop this and could have yesterday. He basically gave a thumbs up by saying nothing. And now he's out there poking the president, trying to place a bet about the Toronto Blue Jays versus the Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series, and Trump's not replying. That's why. A trade war provoked by Ontario's antics is collapsing what little negotiating power we had regained. Now, that's the full-on arrogant elitism of the modern liberal class, of which this man is a part of, like it or not. Using public money like their personal political slush fund, believing they can impose moral virtue on the world while ignoring the real consequences for Canadian jobs, Canadian farmers, Canadian exporters. Dougie having a tantrum on U.S. airwaves, trying to get his next CNN interview booked while destroying this country's sectors. And Mark Carney standing right behind him, not saying, hey, Doug, maybe we shouldn't put those ads out while we're getting closer to sectoral deals. See, Doug Ford's government spent millions on this ad campaign in the U.S., telling Americans that tariffs are bad, big bad tariffs, and your president's bad, he's orange. With Reagan's voice, without his permission, saying that high tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation. Businesses shut down, millions lose jobs, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff they've already said. That was Reagan in 87. But the way the ad is packaged, it's edited, it's targeted at American Republican districts where Trump draws his biggest support. It is provocatively timed and provocatively targeted. And look, the Americans didn't like it. And President Trump went ahead and tweeted it was fraudulent and that Canada is trying to illegally influence a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. Between the lines, Canada's bullying the U.S. That's what's happening, which is hilarious because that's what we felt was happening to us. The result? The U.S. terminated trade negotiations with Canada. Great tactic, guys. Right when our exporters need deals the most. Right when global supply chains are under strain, right when we should be negotiating from strength and not outrage, since we supposedly got some strength back. We didn't, though, and now, if we even had an ounce of it, it's gone. Mark Carney, who should have been on standby as the adult in the room here, either tacitly approved of this or was so disconnected he didn't intervene at all. And now he's back on a jet, again on your taxpayer money, headed for Asia to negotiate with communism, while his own house is burning. You can't make this stuff up. And the liberals, if you don't start seeing this, you're going to watch your entire country crumble, and it's not going to be Pierre Poilievre's fault. You might be thinking, hey, it's just ads, big deal, Baker, shut up, I'm a liberal. But no, this is cataclysmically bad for three main reasons. First, trade leverage lost. Okay? When you antagonize your biggest trading partner through public provocation, you weaken your position. You look like the kid in the sandbox stirring things up instead of the grown up at the table, and on top of it, the kid takes a pee in the sandbox. Just for fun, just because he's mad. With Canada trying to secure sectoral deals, steel, aluminum, energy, auto sector, all at the same time, you need trust and you need credibility. We didn't have that. All of that down the drain now. Taxpayer money wasted, that $75 million spent on ideological virtue signaling could have gone to infrastructure. It could have gone to housing affordability. It could have gone to regional economic development. But instead, Dougie put it all into a commercial. It's used as a political shot across the border. When our citizens are dealing with housing that's unattainable, drug crises in our major centers and smaller centers across the country, affordability meltdown everywhere in this country. And this is the priority? Give me a break. Symbolic self-sabotage. That's what this is. This is the kind of move that says we don't value our own economy. We care more about our image and Trump derangement syndrome. It means we've become the political class that prioritizes woke optics over real impact in this world. And that's fatal for a country like Canada that doesn't get mulligans. Rival economies aren't waiting for us. They're watching this shit. Our neighbors aren't holding hands. They're watching. And they're thinking, the next time Mark Carney negotiates with us, and if we make a misstep, is he going to put a commercial about us in our own country? Look at Mark Carney. He presents himself as a technocrat of global caliber. But have you ever seen this type of behavior out of our country? He should be the one saying, stop. That ad is reckless. We're negotiating right now. We're building. We're working with the U.S., not weaponizing taxpayer money against them. Listen, Doug, I love you. Love having whiskey with you, but you shouldn't put that out there. Pull it. But he didn't. Instead, he's companion to the premier's grandstanding. And then he's out there afterwards cracking jokes about the Jays versus Dodgers and how Donald Trump won't reply to him. This is why he's not replying to you, bud. While actual Canadian industry is on the line, here's what we're getting. While our exporters are wondering whether the Canada-U.S. trade relationship just became hostage to Ontario's little vanity project, this is what we're getting. If Carney was serious about being in control, he'd be publicly distancing himself from this, directing the narrative, going back to Donald Trump right now in Washington, not Asia, and protecting Canada's interests. He's not doing any of that. That means either he's powerless and weak and scared of Doug Ford, or he's complicit in all of this. Which one is it, Mark? Because it's one of them. And either way, it doesn't matter. The outcome is the same. Canada loses. Big time. We look like the immature tantrum cake off the ground eating child. I don't know what we look like at this point anymore. This orange man bad stuff is just off its rocker beyond craziness now. Here's the deeper rot, okay? The reason this happened is because our governing class still views the world through the lens of Donald Trump is bad. Ergo, anything that irritates him is good. They have this reflexive orange man bad Trump derangement syndrome blinder on. Their moral compass is rooted in opposition and not actual strategy. And if this was a trade strategy, what were you thinking? Because of that, they sabotage Canada's interests for the sake of feeling morally superior. Like maybe they flipped Joe Blow's opinion in Detroit. But what happens when the person being offered or offended, is the president of the United States, which is what we have here? Last time I checked, we needed our biggest neighbor as a partner, not an antagonist. This shows the liberal dysfunction, though, including Doug Ford, who says he's conservative, but he's not. They want the virtue sign, but they don't want the cost that goes along with it. Now this is going to be blamed on Donald Trump. They want to lecture Washington to posture to show that they're on the right side, but they don't want to deal with the blowback. And when the blowback comes, Canada pays for it. But the mainstream media tells you it's Donald Trump overreacting to the commercial. Imagine if he put a commercial on our television networks. about what he was saying about the 51st state, you'd feel exactly the same frickin' way. For ordinary Canadians, your job in manufacturing, your farm output, your small business exports, your youth who might move to the US now for work, this matters. Because trade deals are not abstract. They determine whether your town's factory closes, whether the steel mill survives down the street, whether your farm faces duties that wipe out margins. This is childish behavior. Now, when Canada behaves like this, like a political black eye in the carpet of U.S. negotiations, we lose. We already have high taxes. We already have housing crises. We already have cost of living pressure. We don't need our government playing bait for headline virtue signals across the border. This is what they're doing. This is completely unacceptable. If we had impeachment proceedings, it should be happening both to Doug Ford and to Mark Carney. But here's my challenge to Mark Carney in the absence of that, and to Doug Ford, to the entire so-called liberal establishment in this country, and to liberal voters. We need to stand up for stopping using public money for this kind of crap, to wage ideological ad wars, especially when they undermine our own country. We need to pause now. We need to reassess. We need to engage diplomacy instead of stunts. With the U.S. being our largest trading partner for decades, we should strengthen, not antagonize them. Because they're not going away. They're right up against us. Realign our priorities toward Canadians' real problems like housing and jobs and affordability and healthcare and infrastructure, not moral posturing and foreign ad campaigns. Rebuild trust with the Americans, even with Donald Trump in power. Issue a public apology because that's necessary at this point. Withdraw that ad and reopen negotiations from a position of humility, not condescension, and make sure that hopefully they're going to even do that with us at this point. Because the ground we stand on is no longer secure. We're not big enough to absorb the cost of being ignored. We're not insulated from the economy of the U.S. We're not insulated from tweets like this. We're not coronated with diplomatic magic that says virtue signaling pays. Because, truthfully, it really doesn't. Here's the thing. We wrap this up on this Friday, hopefully in a positive note with the Blue Jays, but politically, we're in big trouble. So yes, this ad scandal, this termination of trade talks, this entire charade, it's not just a screw up on our government's part. It's a symptom of a governing elitism and a Trump derangement syndrome that thinks playing moral chauffeur across borders is more important than preservation of Canadian jobs, Canadian futures, and Canadian sovereignty. We messed up, and we messed up big. And this is on Doug Ford and Mark Carney. If you're watching this and you're tired of your government treating Canada like their political soapbox, if you believe Canada deserves a leadership that protects you first and postures second, then don't be silent about this. Share this video, join the conversation down below, and you've got to demand better. And if you're liberal, please join the fray. Demand better from your party, from your leader. Because the cost isn't just political now. The cost is real. And right now, Canada across the board is paying for it. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things. If you're new here, hit subscribe, hit that bell to get notifications of new episodes. And because we've got even more deeper dives coming, you're going to love it. We promise. We're not letting this one slide either, by the way. We'll have our weekend wrap tomorrow morning. Go Jays go. Let's turn it back positive. Game 1, Trey Savage on the mound. Go Rookie go. And of course, we will see you tomorrow morning on the weekend wrap. Have yourselves a great Friday evening. Go Jays go.